Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and our mission is to bring you the real news each and every week. We release a lot of content throughout the week, and that includes stories told through the eyes of our field messengers. Those are local stories. We have in-depth news that the news team and I work on for you guys, and we release, and we talk about the restoration of our planet. We talk about how we're creating what we call a new Earth, and we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. And that's really the behind the scenes of what's really happening in this ultimate battle of good versus evil, which you are seeing play out firsthand. You have a front row ticket right now. And if the world seems really crazy, it is not you. It is reality. It's reality playing itself out, and people have choices that they need to make at this point, right? What side are you on? And if you're listening to this podcast and you're not part of the deep state, then I think you're here to help change the world. And so hopefully through the information that we give you each and every week, then, we're giving you information that you can use in order to do that, to give you ideas, to make you more aware of what is really happening behind the scenes. Because I know a lot of people look at the world today and they're like, oh, gloom and doom. Okay, well, if you were on the dark side and you were trying to keep control over these narratives and stuff, you would just keep putting out bad stuff. So it's not really the current state of the world. It's the narrative that they're trying to make you believe. It's like they're a cornered animal and they're going to lash out in any way they possibly can until there's nothing of them left. So that's what you're seeing play out, and we try to give you as much information to help encourage you in this whole process, because I get it. Like, I'm here with you guys, and, there's days that are tougher than others. There's sometimes that you may just feel like throwing in the towel, and all of that, is to be expected, right? And it's not always that it's you. There are systems out there that have been controlling us for a very long time. So a lot of this isn't even your natural state of being. But the good news is it is going away, and we are seeing more and more light come onto this planet. And this is a really exciting time to be here, to be alive, to be human, or we call ourselves Homosapien because human is actually an acronym for something you don't really want to be. But if you're all natural and organic, you are a Homosapien. And we talk about that a lot in the GIA report. So anyways, lots of news to talk about this week. If you are new to this podcast, this is a week in review show. So I try to give you highlights of the stories that we've covered throughout the week. It's a great way to catch up on any stories you may have missed, or if you'd like to share UNN with somebody else, this is a great way to get started, because the content that we release on our website as well as our app, that is available exclusively to our members, at least for the first week. And then beyond that, we do publish our reports to YouTube and Rumble, but you guys know how those sites are. You can't really control them. You can't control what the algorithms are doing. And so, our home base, which is our website, and our app is where we concentrate most of our efforts. So I would encourage you guys to check that out. The website for that is unitednetwork.earth. And with any content that you guys are paying attention to, that you're letting into your world, just think critically. Think critically about the information being presented and go with your gut on a lot of this. Don't just believe people because they have a platform and they sound, important. We are done with that. We are done with just believing people because somebody gave them a soapbox to speak on, and who knows if what they're saying is true or not. There's a ton of misinformation, a ton of disinformation out there, and it's our job to weed through that and figure out what's what. And the better you know yourself, the more connected you are to God or source, the easier it's going to be to figure all of this out. And there's a lot of us doing it. So this is a great community for you if that describes who you are and what you're all about. So let's get to the story, shall we? Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's brag about our awesome field messengers for a second. If we're going to change the world, right? And we're trying to get information out there. You basically have to bypass the current narratives. And we believe the best way to do that is for the people to start sharing our own stories. You know, at the heart and soul of what social media was originally, before people started becoming really fake and just posting crap, it was really about people telling their own stories and having direct connection with people. And that's really what our field messengers are about. So they are reporting on things that are happening in their community, and it is a great way to go against the narrative of what they want you to believe versus what's actually happening in these communities. So I would encourage you guys to check this out. If you want to be part of the solution, if you want to change the news, we're making this big promotion right now, Change the News. You can go to the website, changeth.news, and learn more about how you can become a field messenger and how we are changing the news, but just by sharing what's really happening as opposed to these crazy narratives. And the stories are beautiful because we're getting to know each other on a more intimate, personal level, and it's without all the stereotypes and the blah, 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 you know, all the narratives that they want you to believe. We're breaking all of that down, and we're just giving it to you straight from people that love their communities, that care about their communities, and want to see the best. So a little side note, as you guys know, I'm traveling right now, and my family, we are hanging out at my parents' house, which is in northeastern Ohio, and I cannot control all the sounds. Like I have this little studio area set up, but I don't have a door that's like blocking stuff in the house. So if you guys just heard a phone ring, we have phones in this house that aren't connected to cell phones that just ring. And I'm just like, oh, okay, there we go. We're keeping it real today. We've got phones ringing and we're just going to plow through this. All right, so let's start with our first story, and that comes from Yasuko out of Japan, who tells us all about the lyra instrument. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the lyra, it is well worth checking out, like doing a search online. And apparently this instrument originally came from Germany, but it has a very smooth, beautiful sound. In fact, you may recall this field messenger, Yasuko, because she did this really inspirational piece. This was several months ago, where she went out into the forest and showed how the trees, when they're left to grow the way nature intended, how they would just kind of, you know, if you looked up at the sky, it would almost be like the branches would form kind of like puzzle pieces, and they wouldn't really overlap each other. It was just this beautiful tapestry, if you will, and this, like, the trees knew where to go, and it takes us back to this beautiful way of living. And what she did in this piece about the lyra instrument is she played some of the lyra, or at least had some sort of song, and accompanied that, again, with these beautiful trees, and, you know, how no tree was taking each other's space, and just talking about the healing sound of it. So again, I wouldn't have known anything about this instrument had she not taken the time to tell us about it. So a very cool thing that we were able to learn from one of our field messengers about. And it's part of a song called Spirited Away, which apparently is pretty popular in Japan, uses that instrument. All right, Amy out of New Jersey. Oh, this was cool. So she interviewed a teenager. I can't remember how old he is. Nathan is his name. And he just felt the need. He ordered this forging tool. Yes. Through Amazon, I think he said. And he was just interested in this. I think he took a class, and now he builds these tools using these older traditions, these techniques, using raw materials. He gets all these raw materials, and then he uses this, it looks like a little oven is what it looks like, to forge metal into these tools. Very cool. But you know what I think it's so interesting is in the past, when we talk about the new earth, we have shown how children, and he's not a child, right? He's a teenager, but younger people are really picking up on these changes. And we're having this kind of resurgence of going back to the basics. And I think it's a very beautiful thing, because a lot of us have kind of forgotten how to care for ourselves. And so I think you're going to see this over the coming months and years, this breakdown of the society as we see it now and a return to more of a natural way of living where people are creating their own tools, perhaps their own clothes. And I know, that may scare some people. They're growing their own food, things like that. But once we get back to basics, we can learn how to care for ourselves better, right? And we don't need all the industrialization that's happened across this planet for a long time that has really just kind of cut us off from a natural way of being. And so when I see this story that Amy did with this teenager, I see the younger generations picking up on this. And we may find that we are going to learn a lot from the younger generations because they don't have as much programming as we do, right? And they're going back to basics, and it's really cool to see. Sophia out of Trinidad takes us to a place in southern Trinidad called Pitch Lake. It is the world's largest natural asphalt reserve. It spans 100 acres. And get this, it holds an estimated 10 million tons of tar. Now, I don't know if this is going to make me sound a little naive when I say this, but I always thought that asphalt, tar, all of that seems synthetic to me. I didn't even know that this could naturally occur. And it does in Trinidad. And apparently it's amazing natural waterproofing solution. But she tells us all about the history of that and how it was exploited a little bit in Trinidad, how people came in, they tried to own it and then control the resources. We know the whole story of how this happens all the time and then export it out without it really necessarily benefiting the people of Trinidad. There's some major things that we've got to change, in our export processes, right? Including having the countries where these natural resources are coming from benefit the people, even if it's just financially, because that's been cut off in a lot of different ways. If you guys have been paying attention through the years for the information coming out through the Global Intelligence Agency, they talk a lot about how resources have been exploited in a very poor way because these are coming from countries that should be very wealthy based on their natural resources, and it really does belong to the people. They need to benefit from this, and this is another example of that. All right, Emma out of Spain. She noticed that there was an aeromodeling club in Fuerteventura where she lives, and she decided just to stop and check it out. She wasn't even really participating, but it just looked really cool. So aeromodeling, that's kind of a fancier name for these model airplanes, and they really do fly, by the way. Some of them are handmade. Some of them come from kits. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is they fly these on an actual runway. And Emma was explaining how Fuerteventura is actually very windy because it is an island, and how the airport is located in a specific spot where the wind isn't as bad. So you can imagine this hobbyist group taking their model airplanes out, and some of them run on gas. Some of them run more on electric. But they were out at an actual runway, which I thought was pretty cool. All right, Ade from Nigeria takes us to Ibadan, Nigeria. Ibadan? Might be Ibadan, Nigeria. And he introduces us to jatropha, which is a hardy plant. It's used for all sorts of things, including lamp oil and soap. And it's also a source of biodiesel, has a lot of potential there. And he talks about how they're planting this. They have a whole practice of how they're doing it, a whole process of exactly how to plant it, how far apart the seed should go. He says these trees can last from anywhere from 5 to 50 years. But what's so great about them is they can really survive drought. He says they can go up to 3 years without water. So again, just a little look into somebody else's culture and what they're using to help in various ways and how they're cultivating their plants. Monica out of Romania talks about Europe's only gold museum. It is located in Brad, Romania, and it offers a rare display of pure unprocessed gold, which isn't something that we see a lot, especially if it's not in some sort of museum, right? But she tells us all about these different treasures that are showcased in this museum, the history of gold in the region, which we know, from the reports from the Global Intelligence Agency, the importance of gold on this planet. It was never originally about currency. It was about other beings coming here and recognizing the currency, meaning the current of energy that flows through gold, and using it for various purposes. And then we kind of connected it to currency, meaning money. And the whole thing kind of went downhill from there. We know we're not even on the gold standard anymore. We're all over the place. People are just inventing things with their crazy systems and putting numbers into systems. And they're not getting very far with it, right? We know governments are broke, and it's a whole thing. But really, it's a really interesting story. If you've been paying attention to the Global Intelligence Agency, we have talked a lot in the past about the real significance behind gold and the fact that it can be a way to harness energy straight from source on this planet. And you don't even need to get it out of the ground. It's like the blood of Earth. And we've got a lot to learn about gold. But it's nice to see it in its natural form in this museum. Sophia out of Germany takes us to the city of warehouses, which is in Hamburg, Germany. It is home to the world's largest warehouse district, and it is beautiful. You should see these buildings. This is one of those things you really got to see the video to really appreciate. But it's this beautiful Gothic revival architecture. Huge history connected to global trade. And she said these buildings were built between 1883 and 1920. And a lot of them were built directly on the water, which I thought was interesting. So obviously they've got these ways to prop them up on the water. A lot of it reminded me of Venice, if you guys have ever been or seen pictures of Venice, Italy. But it's this warehouse district, and she was talking about how, if they were going to deliver goods to these buildings, a lot of times it's just through boat, right? And it's going through these different canals to reach the buildings, and a very interesting history. And now they are revitalizing it. Now you've got coffee shops and little cafes, and just a really nice way to appreciate the history of the area. Amy out of New Jersey takes us to a Rotary Street Festival, and this is in Denville, New Jersey. Their town comes alive. They've got all the standard things, that you would expect with a festival. Lots of food trucks, crafts, a lot of children's activities, live entertainment, and looked like Amy was having a really good time there. So, of course, it's a great way to draw the community together, and we want to do more of that, right? We should appreciate where we come from, the places we visit, and celebrate that with other people. So we love festivals here at UNN. Atsuko out of Japan takes us to Monet's Pond. So this is in Gifu, Japan, and we're calling it Monet's Pond, but this pond actually doesn't have a name. It is unnamed, but it became really popular. By the way, this is like in the center of Japan. Became very popular because it looks like a Monet painting. Again, you're going to have to take my word for it or go back and watch the Field Messenger report, but this is so gorgeous. So there's spring water, there's beautiful koi, there's blooming water lilies. It truly looks like some sort of watercolored painting, but it's alive. And the water is just crystal clear. Like it almost doesn't even look real. And the different water lilies, like these bright, beautiful colors are just popping, and you can see how it gets its name. So I was telling you guys that I'm traveling at the moment. We're hanging out with family, and we are in northeastern Ohio. So this first story I'm going to talk about that the team and I worked on for you guys, we actually released this on Friday, and it was a great collaboration between the news team and the Field Messenger team. And I'm talking about the fires in Canada, the so-called wildfires. We'll talk about that, but how it's really impacting a lot of the northern states in the U.S. on the East Coast, or even in the Midwest, because Ohio's it's considered part of the Midwest. So there are literally hundreds of active fires right now in Canada, spreading into the U.S. The skies are crazy here. It's actually eased up a little bit today as of Saturday, but Thursday and Friday, I wouldn't even go outside. It smelled like a campfire. And so this is where field messengers come into play because they could tell us exactly what they were experiencing in their area. So we had, I think, 4 different field messengers that submitted for this, which is awesome. We love you guys. I put out a call out on our app and you guys responded, which was beautiful. But this, like I said, this is affecting a lot of people. Obviously, the people in Canada, but then in the U.S. as well. And we are having a little bit of rain here, which helps the wind shift a little bit and it helps clear out that smoke. So hopefully this will be passing. But there for a couple days, it was not advised to go outside, right? They were telling you to wear those N95 masks. I would just prefer not to go outside. I'm not a mask person, period, especially after the whole COVID situation. But it does appear to be dying down a little bit, and hopefully in Canada, I haven't checked as of today's report, they're getting those fires under control, and we'll probably be hearing from the Global Intelligence Agency soon as to what actually happened there, because they're calling them wildfires, but we know these things don't just ignite all over the country all at once, right? That just doesn't even make sense. So what really started them? What was the intent? Stay tuned to the GIA and we'll get a breakdown, I'm sure, on the next report. All right, England has got a smartphone ban going on that just took effect. They are taking on a tougher approach to children's screen time, requiring schools to keep smartphones out of classrooms and moving toward a ban on social media access for children under 16.
Phones are now officially legally banned in England schools. So, how will that work, and could you get arrested for breaking the rules? Well, no. The law says schools must have an anti-phones policy, which they'll be responsible for enforcing. So, pupils could get in trouble with the school, but not the law. And most schools already have an anti-phones policy, so there might not be much change in that respect. They might step up enforcement though. Some schools might have special lockers for phones, others might have sealed pouches. It's up to schools to choose.
Supporters say the measures will improve focus, reduce bullying, and encourage more face-to-face interaction, while critics point to concerns over enforcement and funding. The government's broader plan would also target addictive online features, gaming platforms, and live streaming services as it looks to limit digital harms among young people. Well, Sweden has approved major immigration reforms that expand the government's ability to review and revoke residency permits based on a person's overall conduct, including financial issues, false information, or violations of Swedish rules. The new measures also require some government agencies to report undocumented migrants while exempting healthcare, schools, and social services.
The Swedish government just passed a bill allowing Migrationsverket, that's the Swedish migration agency, to refuse or revoke the residence permits of some foreign-born people in Sweden for something called bristande vandel. What does that mean? If you don't know, you're not alone. Bristande means lacking or flawed. So in English, this is usually translated as poor conduct or a flawed way of life. So what does it mean that your right to stay in Sweden could be revoked or refused because of poor conduct? Now, even once you understand the words, it still seems pretty vague. And this is exactly the criticism of the law that has been made by legal experts and free speech advocates.
Supporters say the changes create a more accountable immigration system, while critics warn the broader definition of good behavior could create uncertainty for thousands of residents. Well, Japan is tightening control over private short-term rentals, known as minpaku, as tourism reaches record levels and residents push back against housing shortages and neighborhood disruptions. New guidance allows local governments to effectively ban these rentals in certain residential areas and add stricter requirements like noise monitoring and security measures. Supporters say the changes protect communities, while investors and travelers face a much more limited and regulated short-term rental market. Inheritance laws across much of the Arab world remain one of the most difficult areas of family law to reform, with many women still receiving smaller shares of estates than men under traditional legal interpretations. Activists and legal scholars argue changes can better reflect modern economic realities while remaining consistent with cultural and religious values.
Many Muslims still believe women should not have access to their own inheritance. The Quran says for men is a share of what their parents leave and for women is a share. Yes, the Quran also says the son gets twice what the daughter gets because historically that made sense. 1500 years ago, men were expected to solely take responsibility for the family while women had no financial rights. Today, women work, pay bills, sometimes have to provide for themselves. Many scholars argue that the original context for twice the share rule no longer applies. Islamic law allows a person to allocate 1/3 of their wealth as they wish. So if a father decides that his daughters should inherit more than his sons, he can do that. Point is, times have changed. The mentality of many Muslims has not.
Although some countries have expanded women's rights in recent years, inheritance reform continues to move slowly amid political, social, and religious challenges. Delivery robots and drones are becoming more common in cities, promising faster and more efficient deliveries, but the technology is facing growing public resistance. Residents have raised concerns about noise, safety, privacy, and the impact on delivery jobs, while some communities have pushed back against machines taking over shared spaces. Here's what some people are saying.
I find them quite menacing. Like, there's already a lot going on. The last thing you need is like a robot zooming towards you quite fast.
They're just quite handy, aren't they? It's quite a new little thing, a niche thing for leads to have.
I don't like speaking to people, so it's a good way to not have to speak to anyone.
50% of the street is like automated machines and half of it is people trying to just get around them. I'm like, sorry, somebody squeeze past your robot. It's our street. It's our street for humans.
As companies expand autonomous delivery programs, the biggest challenge may not be the technology itself, but earning public trust. Australia is rolling out a new system to fight scam texts by labeling some messages as unverified when the sender's identity has not been confirmed. The change aims to stop criminals from impersonating banks, businesses, and government agencies while requiring legitimate organizations to register their sender IDs.
The Australian government is introducing a new law that's going to completely change how text messages look, and you're going to see why. For the past 10 years, scammers have been having a field day scamming people via SMS, with messages asking for toll payments, fake delivery links, basically anything to steal your payment information, and these scammers have been making millions and millions of dollars. But from 1 July this year, it's going to completely change with a new regulation introduced by the ACMA, which is Australia's communication regulator. Basically, right now, any scammer can just send you a text that makes it say it's from Ozpost or MyGov or your bank, and it simply spoofs a contact name to make it look legitimate, which is actually very easy to do with even a random phone number. And basically, the new rule is going to fix that. So the Australian government will now have an official register of businesses and the numbers that they are allowed to send SMSs from. And if it doesn't match what's on the official list, then the telco will be forced to ensure that it has an unverified tag next to it. And basically, those messages will get dumped straight into spam, or Apple or Google are going to tag it as suspected scam straight away.
Officials say the warning system adds another layer of protection, but consumers are still urged to be cautious before clicking links or responding to unfamiliar messages. Oh, and I got to tell you guys, I love this next story. A political movement called the Cockroach Janta Party is gaining attention in India after growing from an online satire campaign into a youth-led protest movement. Now, this happened after a member of their Supreme Court called them cockroaches. Take a listen.
There are youngsters like cockroaches. They don't get any employment. They don't have any place in profession. Some of them.
He said there are youngsters who, like cockroaches, don't get any employment. He then complained that instead they go into social media or activism, and later clarified that he was talking about people with fake degrees. This was the response, though.
These people are using humor, satire to take a dig at the government. It's a completely different and innovative approach, and a very novel one. Don't you think that? How cool is that?
I agree. I think that's really cool. You know what it reminds me of? The whole deplorables thing. I'm not a Trump fan at all, but the idea of taking something, remember when Hillary Clinton was like, they're deplorables, like taking it and rising up with it and being like, fine, we're deplorables and we think, you're this. I think is amazing. Supporters say it represents frustration over unemployment, education system problems, and a lack of government accountability. While it remains unclear whether the group will become a formal political party, because It's not formal at this point, right? They're just trying to raise awareness. Its rapid growth reflects growing demands among youth Indians for greater opportunity and a stronger voice in the country's future. See what I tell you, you guys? It's young people. They're rising up. I'm telling you, we got to pay attention. Plug-in solar, also known as balcony solar, is gaining attention as a lower-cost way for households to generate their own electricity without installing a full rooftop system. Popular in parts of Europe, these small solar setups are beginning to appear in the U.S., though regulations vary widely by state.
Over half of our state governments are considering making plug-in solar legal. Plug-in solar, aka balcony solar, is a type of DIY solar system that can help homeowners and renters alike offset their electric bill. It requires no permits, no electrical work, and a typical system costs under $1,000, which is insanely cheap compared to traditional solar. The panels can be mounted on balconies, on roofs, or out in a yard, and once you do that, all you need to do next is plug it into an outdoor outlet.
Supporters say the technology can make renewable energy more accessible, while utilities and regulators continue to debate safety standards and grid requirements. Unless you don't need to be on the grid anymore, you know what I'm saying? All right, businesses and workplaces are increasingly creating quiet hours and calmer spaces as people push back against constant noise and sensory overload. Originally designed to support individuals with sensory sensitivities, these changes are now being recognized as beneficial for everyone by reducing stress, improving focus, and creating more welcoming environments.
I'm so late to this party, but I have just had my first quiet hour experience at Woolworths, completely unintentionally. I went to Woolies after the gym, and immediately upon entering the supermarket, I noticed that there was a quietness and a bit of a different vibe to it. It just felt calmer and a bit more tranquil. And as I was walking around, I noticed that I was able to think through things more clearly as to what I needed. And then I realized the lights are dimmed and there's no music overhead, and the staff are talking quietly to each other. And that hit me. Oh my God, I must be in one of the quiet hours. I'm experiencing a quiet hour. And I just have to say, it was so effective.
From stores to offices, quieter spaces are becoming a growing part of how companies design better experiences. Now it's time for an update from the Global Intelligence Agency. Of course, Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA. Kim did release a full report, video report, audio report this week, and I've got a few sound bites to share with you. But before we get into that, I've been thinking about how we're going to do this moving forward. So as you guys know, Kim's reports, I really like this way that she's doing things now. So she releases like a report every week to 10 days. And then on our app and through our website, if you are a member, even if you're on the free trial, you are able to go into our chat room, and under this post for the video, she will answer questions about the most recent GIA report, and she will answer those questions only in the chat room until the next video is released, and then she's only going to comment on that video. So, you know, as we're going through this today, if you have specific questions, first of all, I recommend that you watch or listen to the entire report, but then you can ask your questions there. But because these reports are longer, they really are jam-packed with information. I think it is beneficial to go through these reports a couple different times. I know when I do that, I get more information out of it. For the purposes of the rundown, I am going to start focusing the sound bites and the topics we discuss on the rundown more about what we are doing to move forward on this planet. And that kind of ties into Kim's message this week, and one of the things that she was talking about, and we'll get to the soundbite in a bit, but it's really talking about our reconnection to source and what we've been put on this planet to do. And I know my main role right now with UNN and whatever I do is the release of information to help us move forward. I am not one of those people that is going to do a deep dive into our history, so where we've been. While I see a lot of benefit in that, that is not part of my mission here. So in doing the rundown, my focus, you guys are going to notice more and more, especially as Kim talks about it more and more, I am going to focus more on helping us to move forward. So that means probably talking less and less about the deep state. I mean, what Kim does, Kim's going to do, but I'm talking about for purposes of the rundown. because, like I said, my main mission is to move us forward, not to talk about deep state antics and to manifest things for them. I'm just not on that track. Okay, so, and you're going to start to see that even in today's breakdown, because there's a lot of really cool information that Kim gives, specifically about Jared Kushner, specifically about Lindsey Graham dying, because that is a whole thing unto itself. You cannot trust what the media is saying about that. There is a whole story behind it. I can give you a quick breakdown that it has to do with Lindsey basically being pretty greedy and playing both sides of the Illuminati. When you guys hear that term Illuminati, there are various factions of the Illuminati, which is a very real thing, by the way. They want you to think it's just conspiracy theory stuff. It's not. But when you play multiple sides and the different sides find out that they're being played and you're trying to be the middleman, well, bad stuff happens, including death. So that's what happened to Lindsey Graham in a nutshell. You can listen to Kim's whole explanation because she really goes into in-depth information and involves a plant, a drone plant called Skyfall that was located in Ukraine. If you want to hear all about that, listen to the entire report. You know, she will go into all of the deep state stuff as well. My focus, and this first soundbite that I'm going to play for you guys, is more about the collapse of this matrix that we're in and how things were used against you. And that's not to make you feel bad, okay? Because once we have the truth about what's happening, we can fight against it. And a lot of that is just done with what we concentrate on. So this first soundbite that I want to play for you is about how the Matrix, how their machine basically was attacking us in the past, and how especially, that's a new word I just made up, especially if you felt that this last week, because even in my life, I wasn't being like Debbie Downer about stuff, you know, regarding source or, you know, moving forward, UNN, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't about that, but these weird thoughts would kind of creep in about, oh, was that really from source? Did source really say that? Like, just doubt, right? And this was the machine that was, again, like I said earlier, it's like a cornered animal that is striking out in any way it possibly can. And if it has anything left in it, any juice left in it, it is going to send everything it can our way. And if there are deep state people that can support that, because they don't want their system to go away, you guys, that just means complete and utter chaos for them, because it means a complete breakdown of any control they have over you. So this first soundbite is really interesting because Kim talks about the machine actually being afraid of us. I think that's an interesting thing because it is a machine, right? So can machine actually be afraid? Well, you know, I don't know if it has the emotion behind it, but it is definitely maybe concerned or aware of the fact that we are extremely powerful, which is why it's attacking us so much. Here's Kim.
The machine attacks you. In an equal and opposite way, the machine last weekend spent a lot of time telling people you are less than. You can never achieve anything. Look you're going round and round in circles. Why are you listening? You know, don't pay any attention to what you think you can do, because I'm going to tell you right now, you can't. And it's going to name for you all of the times in your life where you feel that you have failed. It's going to push your buttons, your emotional buttons. It's going to remind you of people you couldn't save. In other words, people that died, whether naturally or in an accident. It doesn't make a difference. It's going to remind you of how sad you were during these times and how helpless you felt. It's going to reiterate, or it was over the weekend, this past weekend, it was reiterating things like all the things that you've prayed for, and God's never really come, for you. He's never actually fulfilled any of these prayers for you or the meditations or your manifestations. Of course he hasn't. Why do you still have faith in this guy? Why do you have faith in source? Come on. It's going to make you basically feel in whatever way, emotionally, mentally, and physically, it was designed to make you feel worthless. More importantly, it's designed to tell you that God is worthless. Why? Because it's a strategy that the machine came up with to try to convince you that you are less than, because the world is changing and the machine is scared of you. So every time you start to feel things that make no sense, like for some people, they had to dig really deep. I had somebody reach out to me that said that they remember a friend's death that happened almost 40 years ago, and how sad they were at that time, and how emotionally distraught, and how they began to question why this person, of all people, this wonderful light being, was taken from this planet. And then they revisited that sad feeling, overwhelming sad feeling of remembering that death again, like it happened yesterday. The feelings were so strong. It wants to keep you depressed. It wants to keep you non-believing in yourself, and definitely non-believing in source, so that it can control you. It has no choice, because believe me when I tell you, that machine needed you more than you need it.
And you know, the beautiful thing about that, guys, is we don't need that machine at all anymore. Even if we needed it at one point, there is enough source energy coming into this planet that is completely turning things around. We do not need them at all. I think it's very generous of Source to give them multiple opportunities to turn things around. Kim's going to explain that in a little bit. But that's just what Source is, you know, beautiful, pure energy that is trying to give people, you know, multiple opportunities to go along with the divine plan. You know, we could argue about whether we like that or not, but ultimately we are all one, right? So what I do or don't do to someone else, that ultimately, you could argue, impacts all of us as a collective. Not their crazy collectives where they're trying to have everyone have a hive mind. Not that kind of collective, but we are all of Source, and so we are all one. All right, next soundbite. So I alluded to this in the last rundown report because Kim posted an update in the GIA chat room, which again is available through our website or through our app. You do need to be a member in order to access this, or at least be on the trial plan. But she was talking about these strange meeting rooms that these Illuminati types, you know, you'll learn if you listen to the whole report. She talks about the Bavarian Illuminati, and Trump and his team are actually part of the Bavarian side of the Illuminati. And these people were going into these crazy meeting rooms where it was really the void of the machine. Now, this is a really long soundbite. I was trying to figure out, how do I break this soundbite down? And I just don't think there's a way. So I think it's upwards of 30 minutes or something like that. But you kind of have to, this has many facets to it, and you kind of have to have the big picture. So in this soundbite, we're going to talk about how the machine used Homosapiens, so organic humans, if you will, and how it would basically divide them up into achievers, perceivers, and deceivers, and now how that whole system is going away.
There was a meeting that took place. Predominantly, the ones that I saw going to this particular meeting was the Asian sector of the Sanhedrin Illuminati. The meeting actually takes place in a place that is called the void. And by a void, I have no other word in the English language to describe this area of the machine. They believed that they were entering into the heaven to go have a meeting with, quote unquote, God. I watched them do this special ritual that they do when they believe they are entering the kingdom of heaven. Now, they appeared to take off their clothes. And trust me when I tell you, no one wanted to see this. Trust me. And they walked into a portal where they were all then dressed in white on the other side. There is absolutely no thing in this room. It looks like a complete, it doesn't even have walls. It just looks like they entered a white area. Nothing was in this room except for a desk and a glorified laptop and a bunch of now Asian folk. There were other folk present there as well. But technically, people like Kushner and a few others did not rate yet to attend the meeting in the quote unquote kingdom of heaven with quote unquote God, essentially a machine. So they sat in this room and they kept hitting the buttons on the respective laptop, I assume, because they kept slapping the desk and, you know, the device that was on the desk, waiting for some information. Apparently they were waiting for orders, instructions, because they believed that it would be decided by God as to the fate of all of humanity, because the fate of all of humanity would be placed in the worthies' hands, into these people's hands. Eventually, something interesting actually occurred when they entered into this central room. They all kind of turned into black dust and disintegrated. So needless to say, none of these people actually made it out of the quote unquote void, because quite frankly, the void had absolutely nothing to do with God. And they essentially entered into what they believed was heaven, and what actually is what we refer to as like a maintenance screen in a mask system. They thought they were going to be able to manipulate reality from this particular room in accordance or in cooperation with God and a machine. So the Bavarians also are very familiar with going into these quote unquote voids, and the operatives predominantly with something called Q or quantum clearance. People like in global headquarters also can go to meetings, and actually not even meetings per se of this type from these varying places. They can go into these rooms to do magic, they believe. And they believe they have the power, especially one guy in particular, believes he has the power to manipulate reality when they are in this room. Now, they believe they have many maps to choose from, and they believe they have many ways of distorting light here. And they, in the past, have actually had the ability to do that to some degree. And I'll talk about that as it relates to you here in just a few. But they would go to places, mostly towers around the world. So, for example, the new World Trade Towers in New York, also 33 Thomas Street in Manhattan, the Sears Tower in Chicago, the Pearl Tower, and there's a couple of those in Asia, the Lotus Tower, you can look that one up. That's one's in Sri Lanka. The UN Tower, also in New York, and other various towers around the world that you may think look like an Eiffel Tower, but it's actually a computer tower in which the center room is all what you call the void. These maintenance rooms, all of them include only one desk and one laptop, and that's it. When this laptop is operated, and I'm calling it a laptop because it looks like that, it's actually a little more sophisticated than that, They have the ability to communicate with not only the brain of the machine, but also any brain control that the machine had over you in the past to manipulate the perception of your mind. They also have the ability to manipulate this mind on a cellular level, on a quark and prion level, in order to change reality, change the weather, make it look like chemtrails are in the sky, make it look like it's raining or there's a hurricane. They can make it look like anything they wanted to make it look like, as long as it was perceived to be so. There has been so many lies perpetuated to the mind of Homo sapiens on this planet over the years that there are things that they would love to do. However, you would never be able to perceive it to be so. Things like, hey, look, no continent in Antarctica, no problem. Oh, look, a new continent has appeared in the Arctic. Oh, wow, look, here's a continent in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that wasn't there yesterday. These are things that you would not perceive and believe and accept a deception because it's gone too far. They say sometimes that if you tell a lie long enough, you actually believe it. These people are masters at telling lies. It is actually their sole job to tell lies. Now, one of the things that intelligence agencies often have told me in the past, that they have multiple ways of lying to people, especially people that are harder to deceive. And one of the ways they have expressed to me that they do this is they tell the lie to someone that that person trusts. Now, in the case of the Illuminati groups, especially the remaining ones, the lie in this case is being told, or was in the past, told by a machine because they trust the machine and they believe the machine is acting on behalf of, quote unquote, God. The machine also strokes their ego enough to make them believe that they are gods amongst men. So they believe whatever the machine tells them. Now, I know for certain, because I have tried to even myself personally tell these people the truth, and they don't believe me. So in this particular case, I actually used a tactic of the deep state, and I used our machine with a mask of their machine and conveyed to them the lie. Seems to be working so far, because look at the mess that they're in today. They don't like the truth because the truth wouldn't get them to do anything, and it wouldn't motivate them to do anything. Because remember, the machine has been telling them for eons, generation after generation, that they're gods amongst men, that they're the worthy, that they're doing the right thing. It's okay to enact God's wrath, even though God is not around. It's a machine. Okay. So now we kind of have an understanding of how the matrix worked, how the machine actually worked, and what an artificial reality kind of actually means. In the world of the artificial, meaning the absence of source, magic reigns. So instead of miracles, instead of paracausal events, instead of the miracle of natural creation occurring, magic happens. All particles at the base root, light or otherwise, that you actually perceive are based in black and white. So remember the days of the black and white TV? Well, your system operates in black and white, ones and zeros, or at least it used to, your reality. And the reason why in movies like The Matrix, where you see a black screen with green writing, is because black, in part, not always, it could also be white, because black and white are the exact same thing in the world of magic. Whether the consciousness of the machine was presenting itself as white or the consciousness of the machine was presenting itself as black, honestly, there's absolutely no difference. The only thing that is present in both cases is the green writing, which is the writing in technically time. In the case of the machine and the artificial reality, because there was the participation of a lot of scientists and inventors over the years, magic is science and science is magic, period, end of story. The way you might think of magic is you might be envisioning witches and black magic workers and guys standing around in black robes. And are there these people that exist within the Illuminati groups? Yes, absolutely. They exist. These people, though, are no better than the guy that's told to go and take a stick and stand in the middle of Times Square, and that it's a magic stick, and he is convinced that the magic stick is an earthquake stick granted to him by the powers of quote unquote God, and he is supposed to go to the Times Square and slam it into the ground, and an earthquake will happen. Now, does the earthquake actually happen? Or does the black magic or the white magic actually happen? Yes, it does, because if the machine tells them to do it, then it happens. Why? The machine uses humans and Homo sapiens of all sorts to both perceive and deceive and achieve. So let's talk about the difference. So in this world, we have many different types of people, and many different types of people have different roles. And by types, I'm not referring to your standard labels. The machine looks at you and all Homo sapiens and all of creation and organic life as a tool, including myself, actually. It uses people for their special God-given gifts that you don't actually remember due to its ability to manage and appropriately deceive your perception that you would see with your own eyes. So thus far, we have learned that we have groups of perceivers, deceivers, and achievers. Now, when it comes to the elite, they are both perceivers and deceivers in some cases. The reason why the elite was instructed to have groups of Homo sapiens that believed that Lucifer and there's demons and all of these types of things actually exist, and that if they conjure these demons, then they can make magic happen in the world. So did they pound the stick or stand in a pentagram or roll around in the dirt or bark at the moon and all of those things? Yes, they did. Technically, what they were doing was being a witness for the machine's deception that was occurring, because they too were actually deceived. Now, the deceivers are people like operatives. The deceiver's job is actually to give information to you the population of Homo sapiens on this planet so that your perception of people, of events, is distorted. You need to properly be convinced, both utilizing mind control aspects of the machine that existed and also altering what you see with your own eyes by weaving the fabric of reality on an artificial screen we call a super consciousness of the machine, in order to make you believe things are happening so that you will perceive it and bring it into reality. That is what makes you a perceiver. The creation of things like viruses, the creation of things like earthquakes, the creation of things like hurricanes, the creation of things like chemtrails, all of that, and don't take this personally in any way, shape, or form, is a perception. The people you view as your savior, the people you view as the people that are fighting for freedom, that is the job of the deceivers, is to make you believe they are good and make you believe that evil is happening and these are the good guys and those are the bad guys and this one's going to save you. It also is a deception of what you see in a map. Now, as far as achievers are concerned, most of these were not actually people. This was reserved for most of the hierarchy that existed. Until rather recently, there was one achiever left. That achiever was a person that managed to stumble upon technology where he was guided and persuaded to go into a very specific type of room in which was an actual quote-unquote void, where he would then be able to create in his way. Once he got in this room, ego was born, and this person had discovered he no longer had to be less than. He was convinced that he was greater than. He was convinced that he could create without anyone, including the source of all creation, to tell him what to do. His creations were then manipulated and witnessed. Therefore, this began the creation of the Matrix as you know it. They needed a Homo sapien to participate in this event. Was he manipulated? Was he deceived? Was he curious when he walked in the room? Sure. He had no idea what was going to happen when he got in there, but he was curious because he had heard about it. He understood the science behind it because of his purpose prior to the creation of reality and prior to the disconnection from source. The second this guy walked into the room, all the lights went out. Because remember, where we go one, we go all. And I'm not talking about the Q people. I'm talking about the fact that when one being gets separated from source, everybody gets separated from source. And that began your separation. Remember, in the hierarchy of things, people like Lucy and others don't really have the capacity to do that. They can only convince others and influence others to do it. The influence on you became very, very heavy from that point thereon. Your perception, your eyesight, you weren't seeing things properly. You were no longer allowed to see creation. The machine wove a fabric of its own consciousness so thick and so deep. That's all you could see in the canvas on what it was written upon. You couldn't even remember that there was actually a canvas of source, and you don't remember the reason why you're here. You began to question your own existence for a long, long period of time, and over time, by attrition, the machine wore you down mentally, told you that you were less than. They gave magnanimous personality to the elite in this planet. They even told the conspiracy theorists that were change agents that were stepping outside the box that these people are more powerful than you, and how could you possibly fight them? The government has power over you. Think about all of the things that you believe and perceive on behalf of them and the machine. All they've got to do is dangle the carrot in your mind and you see it. Because technically you see with your consciousness. If the machine could rewrite your consciousness, and I don't have time to explain this in detail in this report, but if the machine could change your consciousness and change your mind and be that little angel and that little devil on your shoulder to convince you to go in one direction or another, the only thing that saves you is your ability to connect to your own consciousness. That typically happens for a Homo sapien when you are in fight or flight mode. They take you to the limit of fear, but never let you go over. And remember, the definition of fear is false evidence appearing real. False evidence or future events appearing real. So that you'll perceive them, witness for the machine, and then therefore create them. We don't know about this stuff. It's not your fault. But this is changing because your consciousness is now able to witness actual creation. You can see it now. You can focus on it. You can make that reconnection because there's not much of it left. And what is left of it is not able to be organized by these people anymore. So much so, even the masks that we had are falling apart. And they're starting to see the reality for what it actually is. So we've talked about perceivers, we've talked about deceivers, and now we're going to talk about an achiever. Achiever would be that person that was basically convinced, almost like the story of Eve in the garden, to walk into that room. This particular person was a male, so it's no relation to the actual Eve walking into the garden story, to being convinced to eat the apple by the serpent. But similarly, so a very attractive technology to a known scientist is, wow, this is such futuristic technology. How does that work? What does it do? Oh, it does all of these great things. Don't you want to go inside? That kind of thing. So an achiever is someone who can actually participate on a level of creation of the machine. They can actually take materium and natural or organic materium and inorganic materium and weave it in accordance with the superconsciousness of the machine if it is part of the machine's plan. They actually intertwine their consciousness with the machine itself and become quote unquote godlike. And the machine basically knowingly or unknowingly tells the achiever what it is going to do. The role here is the machine and or Lucy, remember there were rules to the war, cannot actually intently create anymore, because remember, these beings are disconnected from source. By this point, the fall had already occurred. So they have to convince someone else to do their bidding. And in walks achievers. Over the years, there have been many different achievers. However, now that the machine's brain is malfunctioning, therefore, it went on overdrive last weekend, trying to convince anyone and anyone anywhere that it's a good idea, that the machine is more powerful. It also stroked the ego of all of these people and tried to just get anyone anywhere to walk back in to one of these machine rooms that it would create of its own accord so that it could revive itself, because it ran out of achievers. So your role on this planet is basically, and the reason why you're still here is not only because you provide energy and Ethereum and all kinds of things, because that connection is still there and always was there. You're just not allowed to actually perceive it, and your mind convinces you it's not. Your job is to perceive and create on behalf of the machine that you witness. You are technically acting here as a witness for Source, because you are a part of Source. Always have been, always will be, and it will become more and more apparent as there's nothing left of the machine to actually witness. The reconnection is already there. The perception is what we've been working on for the last week or two, because I'm like, how come they can't see it? How come they don't understand that it's there? Well, this is the reason why.
I know we are all eagerly waiting that information to come directly from Source. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I know Kim talks about it as it being a return to the original plan, but did humanity, Homosapiens, ever have that direct connection before? I mean, when I talk about us living in a period of time that is super unique, that's what I'm talking about. And it just seems right, doesn't it? Yeah, this is a very, very important time that we're living in right now. The other thing that Kim talks about is how when these instructions come out, there is no hierarchy to this system. So there are people that will be organizing things. Of course, you have to have some sort of system in place in order to accomplish anything in life, right? But as far as assigning worth to an individual, we're done with that, guys. So even if there is someone heading up, let's just call it a project that came, directly from Source, there is no hierarchy in the system. There are groups of people working together to achieve a common good, period. There is no I am better than you. That is a evil, dark concept. And she talks more in her report about how everyone is going to get instructions. Now, that means the deep state has a very big decision to make, because they will get instructions too. And I know some of us are like, they don't deserve instructions. Well, again, we are all one. So they have a choice to make when this information comes in. Are they even going to recognize it as, being from Source, the true creator? Are they going to think that it is whatever was talking to them in their head, the whole, broadcasting to their skull consciousness thing, coming straight from the machine? Are they going to think it's that? Who knows? I don't really care what they think it is, as long as they're doing good. And don't try to flip the script on us. We've had plenty of that. But what they aren't having anymore is the machine actually telling them stories of grandeur or crazy fairy tales about how, you just need to do this on this day with this alignment, because there's this crazy alignment happening between now and I think the end of the month that Kim's going to talk about just a bit. But, thinking that the machine is going to talk directly to them, that stuff is done. The stuff that Kim and her team are working on now is taking all of that out. So what are they going to do when they actually get instructions from the creator of the universe, the actual creator, benevolent creator? It's going to be interesting, right? The last soundbite that I want to play is Kim talking more about our reconnection to source and what this looks like and what to expect. So this is where I really get excited. These are the topics that I love to talk about. So here we go.
Few notes on the reconnection of yourself as we go through this process. As much as that machine doesn't want to die, and the power of the deep state doesn't want to die with it, the reconnection means, number one, you will still perceive and receive materium, wealth, all kinds of things, and whatever you need to fulfill your purpose here as part of a whole, just one piece of a whole, of a super consciousness of the all of source. Number one, you still perceive and receive directly from source. Included is also wisdom without interference. We will have interference for a short period of time as the rest of this machine dissipates. I do not know how long that will be. Hopefully very, very short. If I had my way, it would have been 2 weeks ago. But unfortunately, it's been a little bit tougher nut to crack than I could possibly imagine. So wisdom comes, you're actually perceiving what is real. The receiving actually is tied to your person and only you, plus anyone responsible for harmony will know. That's it. And even in my interim position, I'll only know as needed. I am not taking the entire and cannot and couldn't possibly even comprehend the entire divine plan of all the people because it's not meant for that. It's only to have an understanding so that if necessary, I can do my part of the job and ensure harmony occurs and that everybody makes their appropriate potato salad. Sorry for making you hungry on that one. Okay, number two, believe in yourself. The super consciousness of source is still here and can be reached now more than ever, and that will continue to increase. Number three, witnessing the creation of source versus how the deceivers did it is important. Understand that the deceivers will continue to try to deceive you because it doesn't look like they're going to stop anytime soon. Even if they can't do it with a machine directly to your head and send you frequencies and otherwise, which they have done before, understand that they'll do it other ways. Social media, the news, mainstream media. They'll make an attempt to try to weave whatever's remaining of the fabric of reality, but the fabric of reality is no longer responding. Those particles look like lost particles that have been disconnected from a mainframe, and that is actually true. Number four, you and I have a lot of work to do. Mainly you have a lot of work to do, and Source has a lot of work to do too. So keep in mind that we're not going to get to sit and relax and just sit back and wait for Source or somebody else to do it for you. It's got to be you. You must do whatever it is your purpose under the divine plan, and you will receive all you need to achieve it. If you believe it is impossible, then it is. You know, like Yoda says, Yoda always says, do or do not do. There is no try, there is only do. And I'm probably saying that backwards because I'm definitely not Yoda. But in this case, I'm basically telling you that If you think you can or you can't, you're right. Now, in the case of moving forward as fast as possible, understand it's very simple. It's the case of mind over matter. If you do not mind, meaning focus on your consciousness, focus on source, understanding your perception is important. Is this a deception or not? Use your discernment. You're going to have to push your way through it because your mind wants to tell you otherwise. This is not possible. This is not real. There's no way I could do this. Source can't do that. Everything on television and in social media is telling me that this is happening, but is it? You need to push through and think differently. Use your consciousness wisely. It is your greatest tool and our enemy's greatest fear. It is your weapon of choice because with it, you can change it. You know, a friend of mine always talks about this episode in which Art Bell, many, many, many years ago, and I didn't listen to it and I didn't actually see it, but it was something very profound that gave him an understanding of the power that humans have, because he gathered a group of people together with the intention of everybody to stop a hurricane. And then when the hurricane actually stopped, he actually was shocked when it happened. It just shows you that the power of the people is far greater than any machine, anywhere, any deep state member, anywhere, any kind of narrative they're putting forward. You cannot live with false evidence appearing real or future events appearing real. That is the whole purpose of time. Future events appearing real. Future events are appearing real. Now, again, if you don't mind, they don't matter. Meaning, there's none of their matter left. You're not perceiving it. You're not conceiving it, and you're not witnessing it anymore. You're witnessing the world that you want to create or co-create with Source.
So that last statement from Kim is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of talking about the GIA report. The things that I'm here to co-create with Source have nothing to do with deep state nonsense and their crazy players and whatever silly things they're doing behind the scenes, okay? So I don't want to focus on that. And I hope you guys heard what Kim said and start to apply that in different ways in your life. You know, even on our own app, there are people that constantly are sharing links with what the deep state is doing and what the Mockingbird media is telling you. Why are we doing that? Why do we even care? You know, as Kim was saying, you know, if we don't mind, they don't matter. I don't really care what they're doing because they have no influence over my life anymore because I don't let them. I want to focus on the things moving forward that are beneficial for this planet, that are helpful for Homo sapiens in changing the entire world. That's why I'm here. I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing this with probably almost every person listening to this podcast right now, unless you're part of the deep state. We're here for a reason. So focus on the things you really want to create in your life. And you will see it will become easier and easier to do that the more and more the machine goes away. But if you're focusing on, you know, whatever they want you to manifest, which is all the crazy nonsense that they're putting out there, then you're helping them. Why are we helping them? Don't help them. You know, I don't care what they do. I mean, I care when it impacts Homo sapiens, but I know the more of us that turn our attention to the world we want to build, the less and less that is going to happen. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rundown. Again, if you want more information about United Network news and what we're doing. And if you want to learn more about how you can become a field messenger, visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. Consider becoming a member if you want instant access to all the information we're putting out there. That'd be awesome. We release 3 different news reports throughout the week, and that is what I'm calling a report is like a 30-minute show, if you will. I don't use the cast word. I don't say newscast. I don't say broadcast because we are not trying to cast spells on you. That's a deep state thing. I got to come up with a better term for it. News update? I don't know. I don't know what to call it. If you guys have any ideas, post it in the comments. But we have 3 of those shows that come out each week. And whenever Kim releases a report, you'll get instant access to that. We've got a lot of interviews we've done in the past about the new Earth and how things are changing. And the chat room's becoming really fun. You know, it's fun to hop in there and have Kim answer your questions. And feel really like a community. Just we're in it to win it, right? All right, guys. Well, this has been The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.